Hello and welcome to a special Women's Forum in celebration of Women's History Month and Empowerment Month. Today I am joined by some esteemed colleagues from Henry County Government, and we'll start on the end with Lynn Planchon, Capital Projects Director. We have Ms. Amika Pitts, Elections and Voter Registration Director. We have one of our favorite guests, Holly Lafontaine, who is our Risk Management Director. And we have Bernita Campbell, our Budgets Director. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Great. So we're here to talk in celebration of Women's Empowerment History Month. So I want to talk more about working women and what we do, some of the struggles that we have, but also some of our triumphs. So we're going to start with the question of how can we, as working women in the same industry, help support women in the workplace? How can we do that? Do you have something on that, Lynn?
Yeah, I think if we share our knowledge is really important. Celebrate any accomplishments that we do as a female, because it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It totally is. Amika, can you lend to that?
Yeah, I think that we should embrace possibly having like a buddy, even though it's a male, someone that you can be accountable to check in on, so that they can understand and do the same thing, so that we can make sure on a different perspective as far as male and female, but at the same time, just look out for one another and see if there's anything we can do to help support them.
So that's great. So you're talking not only about in the working environment, but in a well-being environment as well.
Right, well-being in the work environment, because that's very important, because sometimes work can get stressful, and sometimes you just need that moment to be able to talk to someone.
Wait, work is stressful? Is that sure? Are we sure about that?
Definitely.
No, you're right. I agree 100%. I don't know if Holly or Bernita have something to lend to that.
I think just making sure that, like Lynn said, we're there for each other. It's not a competition. Let's be there for each other and not worry about teaching the next generation coming in what we know.
I agree. And it's funny you mentioned not a competition, because I was thinking about that. And I think that there has been a narrative, for other previous generations, for as long as I think people have been around, that there's a narrative that women are somehow in competition with each other. And even as we climb these ranks in the workplace, I think there's still that narrative, but I think it's starting to change. What do you think about that? And if that's true, how can we facilitate that change?
I definitely think there's competition, but I think it's healthy competition. You need to identify someone that you want to be like. That for me, that motivates me. That makes me want to go further, try to do more. And I think healthy competition is always good. That's always welcomed. I think we should always just encourage one another. When we see someone doing a great work, say, hey, I recognize you. I see you. Keep up the great work. Try to develop those types of relationships where it's not just about you, but it's about the collective of everybody succeeding.
I agree. What do you think? Is that something that you've seen in your work environment as well?
Yes. When I arrived here in Henry County, I had a lot of support with the very same thing. Different people spoke of different things that were taking place and gave some very, very constructive criticism. And I welcomed that to be nurturing. And so, yeah, I think it's very good to have a healthy competitiveness that set the bar type thing that you may not be at and you want to reach to always be better.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. I know for Lynn and Holly, I think your work leans more towards a male-dominated field. Is that fair to say? Or at least definitely with Lynn. I know that you've come up through your departments, and I'd like to speak a little bit about that piece of it, because you're not really working with a lot of women. You're working more with men. So how's that dynamic work for you, and how do you work through it?
I actually get along very well with men, and I'm very lucky to have several male leaders within the county that are very supportive of me and encouraging. And as far as in a male-dominated world, construction and the airport both are very male-dominated. And for me, it was just doing my best and proving myself and earning their respect and showing that I have the knowledge and the skill. So that's worked well for me.
It's funny you say that because Lynn, I've known you for a long time, and I have been to so many events, and some of you may have seen this, but where Lynn is the one who will carry those shovels and fix the groundbreaking stuff like anybody else would do, and she's the only one doing it. Like she's right. She's paid her dues, put in for it, showed she can do it. So I applaud that. I think that's wonderful, and I look to you for that because I think that's really an accomplishment. Holly, for you. You have to boss everybody around. So tell me about how that works out when you're bossing some of these other people around, these men, because I think you deal a lot with that field as well.
And I do. With risk, we deal with a lot of public safety, very male-dominated, career choice. And I will say in the past, probably 5 years, things are a lot different. In my career 20 years ago, being young, being a female, trying to tell a police chief you're doing this wrong, didn't go over well. And sometimes I had to get another male to support me, but I've seen as time goes on, things are getting better. I think the country itself is starting to get better. And there's still some challenges here and there. There's, you've got some old school guys, you got some old school gals. But I think we're doing a lot better in the past 5 years with that.
I think so too. That's great. It also makes me think of something else. We are similar generations, maybe not the same, but we were not necessarily the generation that had to burn the bras, break the glass ceiling. I mean, there were people that came before us, and so I don't know if we understand that struggle, but there are still struggles. But we weren't in that mix, so. I think that, but we still do face those. So I think it's interesting. Is there anybody that when you think of, women's empowerment and kind of having that equal place at the table, is there anyone you think of that you look to? I know that Bernita had mentioned earlier, she finds somebody that she wants to aspire to be to. Can you think of someone in your life that has, and it doesn't have to be somebody in the working field, it can be somebody who has inspired you to be who you are?
I would say my mother. My mother has always been a woman who said exactly what was on her mind. And growing up, I wasn't always agreeable with that. And so as I have climbed throughout my career in elections, I was actually the same way, but then I had to learn how to maybe just soften the edges some. And so I've always loved the respect that she demanded respect. Despite of her being a woman, and not just a woman, a Black woman, she demanded respect, and she said exactly what she thought. Sometimes in a pleasant way, and then sometimes not. But yeah, I definitely look up to her. That has paved the way for me to find a balance in that.
I piggyback saying my mother was, single mom, and she was very independent. So if anybody wonders where I get my independence from, I think it's from my mom. I like being able to do everything that I ask any employee to do. I don't want to ask someone to do something that I can't do myself. So I take pride in that.
Right. No, very good. Anybody else? Anybody want to talk about?
I'll say mine's a little different because it's actually my dad. I would be 7 years old and he'd put a hammer in my hand just the same as he would my brother. So it's, if there's a job to be done, you do it. I don't care if you're, in my dad's eye, if you're the girl or the boy, we got a job to do. You're going to pick corn. You're going to help me with this chore. That's what you did.
That's pretty progressive for that time, honestly.
And especially for his generation, but he was all about getting the work done. So.
And see, for me, my dad was just like that. I grew up in a household of all girls. And if it was time to if it was time to clean out the gutters, he didn't say, well, you guys are girls, you don't do it. It was everybody, come on. So things that men know how to do, we know how to do it as well. And my mom, she was independent. She was building stuff, smart as a whip, but she was very independent. And so I picked up those traits. And so that's how I am now. When I'm at home with my family, I'm doing things, I get in there with them.
That's right.
So.
No, and I mean, maybe that speaks to the leadership that we're in. We are in leadership, and maybe there's something from that childhood experience that propels you. You're not going to let somebody else do it if you can do it yourself. I want to go back to when we talked a little bit about what I want to ask you is how do you empower yourself and the women around you? And I know that we touched on it a little bit by sharing knowledge. I think Amika said sharing our knowledge, not being afraid to let them know what we know. So can you give us some other examples of how you empower yourself? Because we've all been in situations where maybe we didn't feel like we had that power. So how would you tell women to get past that, and how do we help empower others around us? Not just younger people, any other women that we're working with.
I think you have to establish goals. You have to figure out exactly what you're working for. And then once you have a clear goal, you can empower yourself. Do I have what it takes to get this done? If I don't, what am I missing? What do I need to do? And then that's when you can look around your circle and say, okay, who can I identify with? Who has that skill that I don't have? Let me try to attach myself to them. Figure out what do they know that I need to know that can help me along my journey.
I think I like to reach out and share anything that I know, because I remember coming up and it seemed like the female bosses I had were a little worse about wanting to hold everything to the vest and not share. And it's not that I'm going to take your job. I just want to learn and grow. And so I struggle with that. So I don't want to be that person. So I try to always go out of my way to, if you want to learn and grow, come hang out with me. I'll teach you everything I know. I'm not worried about you knowing everything I know. I want you to, because I want to take a vacation, or, I want to retire one day and feel like I've left somebody that's ready to move into it. So share what we know. Don't worry about them, trying to take over.
I agree.
I think trusting yourself, having confidence in yourself, and trusting and having confidence in the people. You need to delegate. You need to give people the opportunity to show that they can shine, that they can do the work. It feels great when you can let go of something. So I think that's important as well.
That's so true. That's very true. I think even in our families, I think, when your kids are young, or when your brothers and sisters are young, you can do it better than them, you just do it. And in work, I think sometimes we tend to do that too. We can get it done better and faster, but allowing somebody to learn to do it, make a mistake, get better at it, I think that's important. I think that's really important. Yes. So let me ask you this. We were talking about earlier today the second shift, and the second shift for women is this model of we work all day and then you come home, and oftentimes you're taking a second shift with your family, your husband, your parents. Some have aging parents, you might have children. And so it's difficult to find that work-life balance. So have any of you found that work-life balance? And if you have, share with us how you've done
please
that.
Share.
So
That's one of the biggest things I struggle with.
Okay.
I'm very conscientious with my work, so I have not mastered that, I will admit.
Well, somebody needs to give her an advice on how to do this. And me too. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
As for me, when I first started here, there was no such thing as a balance. I always had my phone, my laptop. I leave work, I set up my dining room area and sat in front of it and tried to cook or either call something in, but it did begin to put stress on myself, not just myself, but my productivity at work during work hours, as well as me being mom, daughter, grandma, Mimi rather, and it just fell a lot hard on me on both ends, and I had to realize at some point I had to find balance. So what I did was I just made it known to my family when I'm at work, they text me or call me. I get to you when I can. And then when I got home, I did set a certain time that I just did not take calls. I may text, I check phone or whatnot, but I had to actually detach, not have the laptop up, and just told myself, just wait until the morning to check your emails. Because I know if some emergency came up, someone would call, and I just had to just learn to let go let go of one when you're at the other.
I think that's great that you can do that, but it took you probably to hit a very hard point to get there, right?
Yes, it's still tricky at times. It's depending on the season for me.
Sure.
And so, but at times when I am able to do that, I totally try to enforce that.
I think that's a great idea. So there's a little bit of, you have to just do it, I guess. But how about with Bernita or Holly?
I think that, like you're talking about second shift, it's a whole new job when we get home. Sure. Even though we've got this one that's kind of following us around, I call it an electronic leash, a little thing that I carry around. But I do have another job, but I've had to over the years, and I kind of went through something before I came here that made me realize, and the dog here in the corner is not near as important as my mental health. So I might not sweep. Y'all might not want to come over. I might not sweep for a week, but I may go outside and take a walk, because that second job, there's certain pieces of it that can just be, I just let it go.
Right. I agree. Maybe it's about setting priorities or like what's important to you. I mean, if it's a spotless, clean house, great. But if it's getting fresh air and exercise, I mean, sometimes you have to choose. We can't have it all. There was that slogan years ago, you can have it all, baby. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It's a lie. You can't have it all, but you can somehow find a balance. You can have a little bit of this and a little bit of that and still get something whole from it. So how about with Brittany? Do you think you have a good work-life balance?
I think it's definitely gotten better. Earlier in my career, I struggled because, you want to be everything to everybody. You want to do great in your career. You want to be a great parent, be a great spouse, but something has to suffer. And for me, it took me actually hitting a wall trying to figure out I can't be everything to everybody. I have to figure out what's the priority. And for me, family is my priority, and I try to make everything else work. And I'm trying to do the balancing act. And I think it's, delegating, helping realize that there's other people along this journey that can help me. We all have to help one another. Right. And so I think that is how I'm able to strike a happy work-life balance, because I've realized I can't take it on all myself. I do have to spread and get help from other people, use my team for what we're there for. We're a team for a reason.
Right. I love that you have that balance, and I love that you said family first, because I think that if you have a family or aging parents or whoever it is that's outside of your work life and that place is happy and that place is running well, then your work life can run well just from that, because that's settled, and then you can kind of put into that. No, I think that's great advice. I think I can learn a lot from you on that one.
It took me a long time to get there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. But again, you probably had to hit a point where you just felt something's got to give.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I understand that. So when we're connected, you did touch on having other people do things and reaching out, and that could be in personal life and in work life. But so how do we expand our connections with each other? Because oftentimes in any environment, we're in silos sometimes. We are so focused on our job and what we're doing. So how can we expand like this kind of forum, learning from each other, learning more about each other, getting good advice about finding that balance? What are some activities that maybe we can do to have that happen? And I know somebody had once said networking, making like a specific networking.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, creating the opportunity for us to network with each other. Yeah.
Has anybody ever done mentoring or had a mentor? Have we looked into that? Because it's something that I've looked into. I don't know if anybody experienced that. Have you experienced having a mentor?
I have.
Okay, and how was that?
I had mixed feelings about it. I don't really feel like we connected like I was hoping that we would have connected. So I felt like we needed more time to interact outside of work, so that you not only know me on a professional level, but you know me on a personal level. So you can kind of understand the balance that I'm trying to reach. And, I think a mentor, you need to have a personal relationship with them. You need to be able to talk to them about different things. But maybe you can have a different mentor, a personal mentor and a professional mentor.
Okay. And that speaks, even if it's not a mentor, I know there's been other women I've talked to who say, I have a very small circle of work girlfriends who I can bounce ideas off of. I can get something from them, even if we're not in the same field. So have you found that helpful in your environments to have that? Do you have that now?
Mine is within the field that I work in elections.
Good.
I work with other counties to bounce ideas off of. If something doesn't work, or on both ends, that we'll reach out to one another to try to help and support to come up with a better way to do things. And also within this administration, sometimes just going out to lunch and having a conversation, just some downtime away from the office. And just sometimes just vent,
Right.
Get it off your things that are going on, and get off your chest, and it just makes it so much better. You feel like an exhale moment. After that,
Right.
you can go back to work and get back to it again.
That's it. It's a recharge.
A
almost.
recharge.
How about Lynn? I know when you're talking about your field and it is male dominated, Do you have that support in your immediate field, or do you have other women that you can kind of go to and say?
I do. Maybe not so much within Henry County in the exact field that I focus in, but there are females in consulting roles and other roles that, yeah, I can ask questions, bounce things off of. But for me, I do it with everyone, male, female. I like to gather people's thoughts and opinions especially if I'm trying to determine something that I'm just not as expert on as I'd like to be. So I'm definitely going to ask for input for sure.
I think so. We have to realize that women's empowerment doesn't necessarily mean no men can. We have to understand we work and we all want to. There are disparities, but we try to get through those. But yes, I mean we have great colleagues that are men, and they totally support us, and we're lucky to have that as well as women. So women's empowerment sometimes comes off as like, oh, it's us, it's everybody. It's just we just want a seat at the table. We just want to be counted. So I'm going to ask you this last question, and it's thinking back to maybe when you were younger, or if you have a niece or a daughter or a young person that you're around. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a young woman entering the workforce today from your experiences? What's that one thing that you could tell them?
I would say find your passion and then develop it. Be your best, be the best. But I think you need to be passionate, especially in work. It should be something you look forward to doing or not something you dread. And I think that, and be confident. It's okay to make mistakes. Own your mistakes, learn from them, move on. And yeah, but definitely finding and developing a passion for something is really important, I think.
Okay, that's great. How about Amika? Do you have a?
Yeah, it's a little bit bouncing off of Lynn. The biggest thing is what she said for me is ownership of what you do, whether it's a mistake or even an accomplishment. To not recognize your worth. To make sure that if you know that you do well, despite of sometimes you're going to have some naysayers, you don't allow that to affect your emotions and who you are. If you shine, you always shine. Allow yourself to shine. You don't allow anyone to dim your light. And so that's what I would have told myself or a younger person coming in. Always be confident in yourself and just take ownership in that one way or the other.
Nobody can take your shine. That's right. No, I love that. I love that. Miss Congeniality, what do you have advice for a young woman coming up in the workplace?
So, the first thing I'm going to tell them is don't worry about the feelings. Because I'm sorry, sometimes people say and do things in a mean way, but sometimes they say and do things and we take it as mean, and that's not, they've got another million things going on. It's not about you. And the perfect example, this morning before I came in here, the county manager called me to kind of talk through something. She was concerned that I took it a certain way. She had a big issue, and she gave me some snap, directives. She didn't mean it snappy. She just needed answers. She forgot she's talking to me because that's kind of how I work. But I have told the younger, women coming into the workforce, don't get so caught up in the feelings when it's work, because you don't know what the other person is dealing with. And sometimes they're just mean and ugly, and sometimes you just have to deal with that. Don't ever let them see you cry either. So come see me and you can cry with me.
That's right. That's solid. Sure.
And the other thing is education. In today's environment, if you want to get to where we are sitting here, you've got to get the foundation and get your education behind you.
Very true.
So for me, I would say be willing to step outside of the box. Don't always stay in your comfort zone. For me, that was a hard thing because I'm an introvert. So Just
We
being
cut you
willing
on the
to-
show, but you're an introvert. I'm like, that's great. I'm so excited.
Being willing to step outside of my box and try something new, because you never know. You could find something that you're really great at and you didn't even know it because you were like, oh no, this is something different. I've never done it before. So just be willing to take chances and try new things.
That's great advice. I think for me, I'm going to go on with what Amika said. Know your worth. And as a young woman, I didn't know that. As as you're growing, like you start to realize it. But I had an open job a few years ago, and a young lady applied for it, and she was coming up from Milledgeville, and I had the salary that I could offer her, which was very set. And she said, "I want to take your job. I want to work with you." But and she was probably about 25 years old. And she said, "But I feel like I've cut myself short my whole career, her whole career of like 4 years." And I was so disappointed that she wasn't coming, but I was so proud of her for passing on it. And I tried to get her more, but I couldn't. So she knew what she was worth, at least at that moment. And she was worth more than what I could give her at that moment. And the fact that she knew it at that young age, I mean, that's a great thing to have at that age. I didn't have that. So I think tell young women, know your worth. And if you don't know it, figure it out. It's about figuring out who you are and what you bring to the table. So no, I think this has been a great discussion. I think we're all going to be off the hook in a minute, but I think that, but I appreciate you all taking the time. I know you're busy. And I think, there's these 4 dynamic women who I work with very closely, especially with Amika and Holly, and then Lynn and Bernita. You do a fantastic job. And so I think you are all great images for other women to look to. So I want to thank you for being here and sharing that with us. I want to thank the viewers for watching. And we hope we see you at the next special forum. Happy Women's Empowerment Month and Happy Women's History Month.